Hello everyone, my name is David Luchford and welcome to lesson 37 of my Ancient Greek course. Today's lesson is titled Introducing Adjectives, and in brackets I've put the principle of agreement 212 adjectives. So as you may be able to guess, today we are going to be starting to learn about adjectives in Ancient Greek, and we are going to be learning about something called the principle of agreement, which we have met before with the definite article, but we shall be reminded of it again. And we're also going to be learning about a certain type of adjective, namely a 212 adjective. But before we start learning about these things, let's take a look at my virtual sets of shelves. If we do that, we shall see that this week, KW has bought me 5 virtual amphorae. KW, thank you very much for your continued support of my channel. KW was actually the second person to ever buy me a virtual amphora or virtual amphorae, so I'm very grateful for the long-term support, KW. KW has donated numerous times and is amassing a collection of virtual amphorae. Now KW filled the final shelf of this virtual set of shelves, and I had somebody else donate this week after KW, and thus I had to acquire a new virtual set of shelves, which you can see here. Look at that magnificent set of shelves. On the first of these shelves, we have 5 virtual amphorae, which were bought for me by Ro. So Ro, thank you very much for your generous support of my channel. I greatly appreciate it. And, ladies and gentlemen, I greatly appreciate all of the support that I have received in making these videos. I really appreciate all of the amphorae and all of these super thanks on YouTube as well. It's really encouraging, you know, if I'm ever feeling overwhelmed with work, I can find motivation to make these videos in reading your messages, looking at your beautiful virtual amphorae, reading your comments, seeing the number of likes, seeing the subscriptions. It all helps a tremendous amount, so thank you very much for that. Now, if you would like to support my channel financially and add a virtual amphora or virtual amphorae to my newest virtual set of shelves while space remains, then you can do so at the link in the description below. But now, let's talk about adjectives. Just to be clear on what adjectives are, let me begin by saying that adjectives are words that describe nouns. They include words like long, small, bad, beautiful, and handsome. All of these words are adjectives because they describe nouns. Adjectives in ancient Greek decline. They change their endings to reflect their gender, case, and number. So like the definite article, adjectives change form, in particular they change their endings, according to their gender, their case, and their number. Now, you might think, why do adjectives need to change form? Because it's a noun that is playing a grammatical role in the sentence. You know, a noun needs to be in the nominative or the accusative and so forth. Why does an adjective need to? Well, there is this thing called the principle of agreement, which I have introduced you to before in the context of explaining the definite article. But for now, as a reminder, let me explain it again about adjectives. Greek adjectives decline, and they have forms for all 3 genders because an adjective must completely agree with the noun that it describes. This means that it must match the noun that it describes in gender, case, and number. Like the definite article has to be in the same gender, case, and number as the noun that it's applying to, adjectives also need to be in the same gender, case, and number as the nouns that they apply to. To illustrate, if a noun is masculine nominative singular, then an adjective which describes that noun must also be masculine, nominative, singular. That is because of the principle of agreement. The adjective must completely agree with the noun that it is describing. That is to say, the adjective must be in the same gender, case, and number as the noun that it describes. Let's look at a Greek illustration of this point. Ton doulon is masculine accusative singular. We know it's masculine from the form of the definite article or by having learned the gender of the noun doulos individually. We know it's accusative singular both from the form of the definite article and from the ending of the noun. And it means the slave. So this is the slave in the accusative singular. Now, kalon is the masculine accusative singular form of the adjective kalos. Kalos is a Greek adjective meaning fine, beautiful, or handsome. Okay, it has those three meanings: fine, beautiful, and handsome. So, if we wanted to apply this adjective to the phrase ton doulon, if we wanted to say the handsome slave, then we would say ton kalon doulon. That is the handsome slave in the accusative singular. So although the masculine nominative singular form of the adjective is kalos, we would say kalon because that is the masculine accusative singular form, and that's what we need for it to agree with ton doulon, which is masculine accusative singular. So that's the principle of agreement. We need to make sure that each adjective we use in Greek completely agrees with the noun that it describes in gender, case, and number. And here you can see that the endings visually match. That will not always be the case, as I shall illustrate later on. Although there is sometimes a visual matching, in fact you could say often a visual matching, the fact that they visually match isn't important. What matters is that they match in respect of their gender, case, and number. And if they don't use the same endings as each other, then they won't visually match, even though they can agree in gender, case, and number, as I shall explain later on. But now, let us talk about the different types of adjectives. There are different types of adjectives in ancient Greek. What makes them different is the fact that they use different endings. One common type is 2-1-2 adjectives. These decline as follows. Here we can use the paradigm kalos. Kalos is a 2-1-2 adjective, and it will be our model for how 2-1-2 adjectives decline. There are some 2-1-2 adjectives which decline slightly differently to kalos. I'll talk about those in a moment. But most of them decline like kalos. And you might be feeling overwhelmed right now, looking at these big tables, okay, thinking, oh my goodness, do I really need to learn all of this? And I have some good news for you, ladies and gentlemen. If you have followed my course until this point, and you've learned its content, or if you've otherwise learned the first declension and the second declension separately, then you are in luck, because you already know the endings that are being used here. If we look at the masculine forms of kalos, it goes kalos, kalon, kalou, kaloi, kaler, kaloi, kalous, kalon, kalois. We have met these endings before, ladies and gentlemen. These are, in fact, the same endings that a 2A noun uses. If you go back and watch my second declension video and you look at the bit on 2A nouns and their declension, you will see that 2A nouns, like doulos, decline exactly like this. So if you know the declension of doulos, or an equivalent to a noun like anthropos, then you can already decline kalos in the masculine. because it uses the same endings in the masculine as a 2a noun does. Now what about the feminine forms? Well, it goes kaler, kalern, kalers, kalei, kalai, kalas, kalorn, kalais. We have met these endings before as well. Namely, the feminine endings here are the same as those of a 1a noun. The 1a noun we learned as a paradigm was the noun boer, which means a shout, and it goes boer, boern, boers, etc. And kolos in the feminine uses the exact same endings. So, we already know the masculine endings, we already know the feminine endings. What about the neuter endings? Well, the neuter forms of kolos are as follows: kalon, kalon, kalu, kaloi, kala, kala, kalorn, kalois. We have already met these endings too, ladies and gentlemen, because these endings are the same as those of a 2b noun. If you think of a 2b noun, like ploion, meaning ship, it declines in exactly the same way as the neuter forms of kalos. Ploion goes ploion, ploion, ploiou, ploioi, etc. And kalos in the neuter goes kalon, kalon, kalu, kaloi. So, the good news, ladies and gentlemen, is that you already know all of the endings which 212 adjectives use. You just need to learn that the masculine forms use the 2a endings in particular, the feminine forms use the 1a endings in particular, and the neuter forms use the 2b endings in particular. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why these adjectives are called 212 adjectives, because the masculine forms are like 2a nouns, the feminine forms are like 1a nouns, and the neuter forms are like 2b nouns, hence the 212. Now you'll notice that I haven't put a vocative form in the feminine or the neuter, and that's because they're the same as the nominative forms in these genders, okay? If I ever do not list the vocative form of a noun in a declension, that's because it's the same as the nominative form, like it always is in the plural, for example. Anyway, please now pause the video and note down the declension of the adjective kalos for your reference. Now I did say that some 212 adjectives decline slightly differently to kalos, but only slightly differently, as we shall learn. 212 adjectives which have stems that end in epsilon, iota or rho decline slightly differently to other 212 adjectives in that in the feminine singular forms they use a long alpha rather than eta. An example of such an adjective is makros. Makros means long, and it's where we get words in English that involve macro. And it's also where we get the word macron. A macron is the line you can see here, which indicates that a vowel is long. And we shall use that adjective makros as our paradigm. Makros declines as you can see on the screen. It's the same as kalos in all forms except these feminine singular forms. In the feminine singular forms, it's makra, makran, makras, makrai. So instead of having an, s, a, it has an, as, I. It's swapped eta for a long alpha. Now you might be thinking, where is the macron in the genitive singular and dative singular? These forms would have a circumflex rather than a macron. So I have omitted it because I'm generally not putting accents on the Greek, but it would also be a long alpha in any case because a circumflex lets us know that a vowel is long, in that if a vowel has a circumflex above it, it must be a long vowel. So do be aware that 212 adjectives with stems ending in epsilon, iota, or rho use long alpha instead of eta in the feminine singular forms, but they're the same everywhere else. Please now pause the video and either make a note of the full declension of makros for your reference, or just noting that the feminine singular forms are, as you can see here. So you know that the 212 adjectives that end in epsilon, iota, or rho have alpha here rather than eta. Now, before we do some practice with adjectives, let's learn the meanings of some more 212 adjectives. The first of which is deinos. Deinos has three quite different meanings. It means clever, or terrible, or strange. You pick one of those depending on the context, but even in context, sometimes it's hard to tell which of those it is meaning. Now you can see I've put deinos, on. In a dictionary or a word list, when you're given an adjective, you will be given its nominative singular forms in the genders that it exists in. Some adjectives that we'll meet in the future have the same form in the masculine and feminine, but 212 adjectives have the masculine nominative singular form, the feminine nominative singular form, and the neuter nominative singular form separately. So if you see an adjective in a word list or a dictionary that's got os, on, or os, on, for the ones with stems ending in epsilon, iota, or rho, those will have r rather than here. Either way, if you see os, on, os, on, then you know you're dealing with a 212 adjective, which will decline like kalos or makros, respectively. A fact about deinos is that it gives us the word dinosaur. A dinosaur, etymologically, actually, I won't spoil it. Let me get there through the Greek. Dinosaur comes from two Greek words, deinos, meaning terrible in this context, and sauros, meaning lizard. So a dinosaur is etymologically a terrible lizard, in the sense of a terrifying lizard. You know, it's a big, terrifying lizard. Let's look at another adjective. Here we have iskouros, meaning strong. You can see here we have os, on, letting us know that the feminine nominative singular form would end in r. That's because the stem of the adjective ends in rho. So it would decline like makros. A third adjective is kakos, meaning bad, evil, or wicked. A fourth is mikros, meaning short, small, or little. Mikros gives us words that involve micro, like microscope, for example. Another 212 adjective is moros. Moros means foolish or stupid, and it gives us the word moron. And lastly, we have the 212 adjective sophos, meaning wise or clever. This is related to words in English that involve SOPH, like philosophy, for instance. Philosophy is etymologically the love of wisdom, and is itself a separate Greek word, but is related to the adjective sophos, meaning wise or clever. So please pause the video and note down these adjectives and their meanings. Okay, let's do some practice with 212 adjectives now. Here is exercise 1, which asks you to state the gender, case, and number of these adjectives. You have 8 different 212 adjectives. They have different endings, and you need to look at those endings to tell the gender, case, and number of each of them. Now, for some of them, there are multiple possibilities, so please list as many possibilities as you can think of. And you can consult your table of the endings of kalos, or the forms of kalos, I should say, and makros, or if you feel like you can do it from memory already, since you've already learned the endings that are used there, you can do that as well. It's up to you whether you want to consult the tables for now, or whether you want to try to do it without looking at the tables. One final thing I should say is please remember that macra are not written over vowels in actual Greek. So, although they're a helpful learning aid, because they let us know that a vowel is long when we're learning a declension, you won't see them over vowels in actual Greek, and therefore, if you come across an alpha, for example, out of context, it could be either a long alpha or a short alpha, and that does make a difference in terms of the possible gender, case, and number of one of the words in this exercise. But now, please pause the video and state the gender, case, and number of each of these adjectives, listing all of the possibilities that you can think of. Okay, to go through the answers, number 1, kaloi, is masculine dative singular or neuter dative singular. Number 2, soper, is feminine nominative singular. Number 3, deinon, is masculine accusative singular, neuter nominative singular, or neuter accusative singular. Number 4, kaku, is masculine genitive singular or neuter genitive singular. Number 5, makrous, is masculine accusative plural. Number 6 is kuran, is feminine accusative singular. Number 7, sopoi, is masculine nominative plural. And finally, number 8, mora, is either feminine nominative singular, there it would have a long alpha, it would be mora, but remember we can't see the macra in actual Greek, so we're not sure here whether that's a long alpha or not. So it could be mora, in which case it's feminine nominative singular, or if it's a short alpha, mora, then it's either neuter nominative plural or neuter accusative plural. So I hope that you were successful in identifying the gender, case, and number of each of these adjectives. Now, I need to speak about putting an adjective with a noun before we do the next exercises. An adjective can be put with a noun in several ways. Firstly, you can use the sandwich construction. That is to say, you can sandwich the adjective in between the definite article and the noun. Like you see here. Here we have ho kalos doulos, meaning the handsome slave. The adjective has been sandwiched in the middle of the definite article and noun. The second method is by using the repeated article construction. For instance, you could say ho doulos ho kalos. You can use the definite article and noun, repeat the definite article, and then add the adjective. Thirdly, you can just use what I call a plain deployment. That is to say, you can simply add the adjective in the sentence on either side of the noun. For example, if you wanted to say a handsome slave, you could say doulos kalos, or you could say kalos doulos. Now, there is some more importance to the position of an adjective in a sentence, but we shall speak about that in the future. For now, note that an adjective can be deployed via the sandwich construction, the repeated article construction, or as a plain deployment, and that's without the definite article. You can just add the adjective either side of the noun. When it comes to plain deployments where the noun does have a definite article, there's some more to be said there in the future. But for now, adjectives will apply to nouns in one of these 3 ways, okay? So please pause the video and note down these 3 methods of putting an adjective with a noun. And one final point before we do the last 2 exercises is that the endings will not always match visually. Although you do see endings visually match quite often, they will not always match visually. That is to say, the ending of the adjective and the ending of the noun will not always visually look the same. The endings just need to match in terms of gender, case, and number. And if the noun and the adjective use different endings in their declensions, then they will not match visually. For example, ton andra is the masculine accusative singular form of the noun aner, along with the definite article that goes with it. So it's the man or the husband in the masculine accusative singular. It's a 3a noun. It's a third declension noun. But Carlos is a 2-1-2 adjective, and the masculine accusative singular form of Carlos is Carlon. So if we wanted to put Carlon with ton andra, it would be ton Carlon andra. That would mean the handsome man or the handsome husband. And there you can see the ending of Carlon is not visually the same as the ending of andra, but it's grammatically correct. Because andra is masculine accusative singular, and Carlon is the masculine accusative singular form of the adjective Carlos. So, they agree in gender, case, and number, even though the endings are not visually the same. So don't always expect to see the endings looking the same, just expect them to be the same in terms of gender, case, and number. By them there, I mean the words. Just expect the words to be the same in terms of gender, case, and number. But do not always expect the endings to match visually. And that's a crucial point, and it's one that pupils often struggle with. Okay, so please do note that. In light of that, here is exercise 2, which asks you to use the correct form of each adjective for each noun and then translate. So, you've got 8 phrases here, and you either have a definite article and a noun, or just a noun on its own, and you have an adjective in brackets. You need to fill in the blanks with the correct form of the adjective in brackets so that it agrees with the noun in that phrase. So, you need to ask yourself, what is the gender, case, and number of Yunaika? And therefore, which form of Carlos do I need to put here? After you've done that, translate the phrase. If it's nominative or accusative, you will just translate the phrase as it is. So, for instance, if you had the strong man as the phrase, you would just say the strong man, whether it's nominative or accusative. If it's genitive, though, say of, so of the strong man, for example. And if it's dative, say to or for the strong man, for instance. So please pause the video, and for each of these phrases, fill in the blank and then translate the phrase. Okay, to go through the answers, number 1 should have been Tan Kalan Yunaika. And that means the beautiful woman, or the fine woman, or the beautiful wife. Number 2 should have been Sophorn Andron, meaning of wise men. Number 3 should have been Toploion to Mikron, meaning the small ship. Number 4 should have been Haideinai Korai, meaning the clever or strange or terrible girls. Number 5 should have been Doulois Kakois, meaning 2 or 4 the bad slaves, or the wicked slaves, or the evil slaves. Number 6 should have been Ta Mikra Toxa, meaning the small bows, or the short bows. Number 7 should have been Makra Chodos. We said makra rather than makra because this is one of those 2-1-2 adjectives which ends in ro. And so in the feminine singular forms, chodos is a feminine noun, in the feminine singular forms we use alpha, and makra chodos means the long road, or the long path, the long street, etc. Number 8 should have been tous andros tous moros, meaning the foolish men, or the stupid men. I hope that you had success in filling in the blanks and translating these phrases. If you have any questions at all, please post them in the comments below. But for now though, let us do exercise 3, which is a translation exercise. I've created 6 Greek sentences for you here, which use 2 new verbs. One is blepo, meaning to look at, and the other is oiden, meaning he, she, or it knows. This verb to know is an irregular verb, and so I have glossed it here in its finite form, that is, with the person included, because we shall look at how oida, the verb to know, conjugates in the future, as it's an irregular verb. But here, in number 6, you know it means he, she, or it knows. With that said, please pause the video and translate these Greek sentences which use adjectives into English. Number 1 is homoros aner gunaika kaken pile. You should have translated this one as the foolish man loves an evil woman, or a wicked woman, or a bad woman. And you could have said stupid instead of foolish. We know that it means this because homoros aner is the foolish man in the nominative singular, so he's doing the action, and gunaika kaken is an evil or bad or wicked woman in the accusative singular. So a wicked woman is the direct object, and pile means he, she, or it loves. So it was the foolish man loves or likes an evil woman. Number 2 is homen iskyros stratiotes echei pelekyn makron, hode hetairos xiphos mikron. You should have translated this one as the strong soldier is holding a long axe, while his companion is holding a short sword. Or something to that effect. There was quite a lot of room for variety here. You could have said has a long axe instead of holds or is holding. There was a variety of acceptable translations here. And one important thing is we did have the pair men de here, creating a contrast between the clauses, which I rendered using while. You could have said but, you could have said however. There were different ways of rendering that contrast. Anyway, we know that it means this because it literally says, on the one hand, the strong soldier, in the nominative singular, holds or has a long axe. In the accusative singular, it's the thing he's holding. On the other hand, the friend or companion, we could say his friend here, because Greek often leaves out the word his, her, its, etc. On the other hand, the friend or his friend or companion, and we understand the same verb, holds or has or is holding a short or small sword. This is a 3C noun. It's neuter, and therefore os, despite looking like a 2A noun's nominative singular ending, is here actually accusative singular. And thus, mikron does agree with it, even though the endings do not visually match. Number 3 is ten kalean parthenon blepe hoterapon. You should have translated this one as the servant is looking at the beautiful maiden, or something like that. Because we have ten kalean parthenon, the fine or beautiful maiden or young woman, in the accusative singular, so she's the direct object. Then we have blepe, which means he, she, or it looks at or is looking at. That was in the word bank. And then we have hoterapon, which is the servant in the nominative singular. And so the servant looks or is looking at the beautiful maiden. Number 4 is ar horais en doi limeni toton sophon anthropon pletos. You should have translated this one as, do you see the crowd of wise men in the harbour? Or wise people in the harbour? We know that it means this because ar is the elided form of ara, indicating a yes or no question. Horais is you singular C. So is it the case that you singular C en doi limeni in the harbour Doton sophorn anthropon plertos? To here is going with plertos, and plertos means crowd. And therefore, we have a genitive sandwich here, and we've actually got an adjective sandwiched in the middle of the genitive definite article and noun. Ton anthropon is the men or the people in the genitive plural. So that means of the men or of the people, literally. But we're told they are sophorn. And so they are wise or clever men or people. So this says the crowd of wise men or of clever men. You could have included the word the here in English if you wanted to. It just sounds a bit strange if you use it with people, if you say the crowd of the wise people. But I think it's fine to have it there or to drop it. Sometimes Greek uses it in places like this where we wouldn't, but on this occasion you could say the crowd of the wise men or just of wise men. It would depend on the context whether we should actually put the word the there in English. Number 5 is idou hoi pulakes doi moroi anthropoi nun legusin. You should have translated this one as, look, the gods are now speaking to the foolish man. We know that it means this because idou is look or behold. Hoi pulakes are the gods in the nominative plural. Doi moroi anthropoi is the foolish man or the stupid man in the dative singular. So we would say to the stupid man or foolish man. Nun is now, and legusin is they speak, or they are speaking. So, look, the guards are now speaking to the foolish man or person. Number 6 is un mantis oide pragmata deina, meaning, therefore the prophet knows terrible things, or strange things, or clever things. We know that it means this because un is a particle meaning therefore, or so, and her mantis is the prophet or the seer in the nominative singular. Oide means he, she, or it knows. That was in the word bank. We shall cover the irregular verb to know in the future. Pragmata deina are terrible things, or clever, or strange things. They are in the accusative plural. The noun pragma is a 3b noun, it's neuter, and so here we have the neuter accusative plural form of the adjective. Let's now summarize our learning for lesson 37. Today we have learned that adjectives are words that describe nouns, and that Greek adjectives decline, and they have forms for all 3 genders because of the principle of agreement. The principle of agreement states that an adjective must completely agree with the noun that it describes, which means that an adjective must match the noun that it describes in gender, case, and number. There are different types of adjectives. One common type is 212 adjectives. And we learn that 212 adjectives decline like kalos or like makros. There are some 212 adjectives that decline slightly differently. We shall talk about those in the future. But that's essentially because with some adjectives, contraction occurs with the stem and the endings. And so you have contracted forms of endings. But for now, all 212 adjectives will either decline like kalos or makros. And we also learned that adjectives can be deployed via the sandwich construction, the repeated article construction, or plainly. And we learned 8 212 adjectives. Moreover, we also learned a new verb, namely the verb blepor, meaning to look at. But for now, let me say thank you very much for watching the video. I hope that you found it useful. If you did, please do click like, and if you have any feedback at all, please do leave a comment. For now though, I have put an ancient Greek frog on the screen, and we could caption this image as follows, because there isn't just a frog in this image, there is also a beautiful woman. Thus, we could caption it as Chobatrachos estin en deikeiri kales gunaikos, meaning the frog is in the hand of a beautiful woman. Anyway, thank you very much for watching the video. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I shall see you again next time.